Congressman Jason Chaffetz is a Republican from Utah. Nice to have you with us. He was just saying that Washington is dysfunctional in a dysfunctional kind of way, and then went on in all the ways the only things that you all do agree on are spending money you don't have and all the dysfunctional things that are happening in D.C. I'm going to assume that you agree with Tom Coburn.
Yeah, I mean, look, one of the fundamental things we're supposed to do is a budget. Now, in the last 2 years, when we've had Speaker Boehner, we've actually done a budget. What is frustrating is the United States Senate, it's been more than 1,400 days since the Senate has actually passed a budget. And the challenge for the president is, in the 4 years that he was president, he introduced a budget. There's not a single person in the House or Senate, Republican or Democrat, who has ever voted in favor of the president's budget. He was supposed to introduce a budget on February 4th. He didn't. He said he'd do it in March. Now he says he's supposed to do it again. He'll do it in April.
Congressman Ryan has a budget, and it's a budget that would, I guess, close the gap within, what, 10 years. The first original one was 30 years. Now we're looking at 10 years. Part of that deal, though, would be repealing Obamacare.
Well, that's what we believe should be is the way to get to the path that you need to. Now, one of the fundamental questions, I think the first question we have to ask is, should we actually achieve a balanced budget? Because in order to pay down the debt, you actually have to balance the budget first. So can we agree, do you or do you not want to balance the budget? The president has never introduced a budget that ever balances.
Isn't a better question is, no one is going to agree to repeal Obamacare. Here's an interview that Congressman Ryan did with Chris Wallace on Fox. Let's play that.
Are you saying that as part of your budget you would repeal, you assume the repeal of Obamacare?
Yes.
Well, that's not going to happen.
Well, we believe it should. That's the point. This is what budgeting is all about, Chris. It's about making tough choices to fix our country's problems.
So he says, I believe should. Chris Wallace said it. That's not going to happen. And I think 99 out of 100 people in the know would answer that question the same way. It's not going to happen. So to some degree, isn't it a waste of time to be negotiating something in a budget that is not going to happen? You're not going to be able to repeal Obamacare unless a bunch of Democrats agree with you, which they're not.
Well, this is why it's important that the House pass a budget, the Senate's supposed to pass a budget, the president is supposed to weigh in, and they get to reconciliation and work out these problems. Question one for me is, are we or are we not going to balance our budget? Paul Ryan is suggesting, and the Budget Committee is suggesting, and what's going to come before the House before the end of the month is, yes, if you want to balance the budget within 10 years, you've got to take care of the health care expense. And the problem with Obamacare is it's making it more expensive for the government.
There's no way to get rid of Obamacare, okay? There is not, as you heard in the interview with Chris Wallace, it's not going to happen. So to some degree, isn't this taking a conversation that's here and further derailing it, which I think is a big source of frustration for Americans in general, right? Is a sense of, like, you're negotiating something that is unrealistic.
If the Democrats disagree, then they have a duty to put forward a budget and show the rest of the country how they expect to do it. So remember, when I was on the Budget Committee last year, we had a budget that balanced, but it took like 28 years to get to that point. So now we've accelerated. If we're going to do this in 10 years because the spending's so out of control, this is one of the tools and mechanisms that you would put in place to actually achieve that balance.
But I feel like we're going in circles on this conversation.
I want to defend you. I think it's fine as a statement of priorities for Republicans to say we disagree with Obamacare and our budget repeals it. I think that's reasonable. Did you vote against the fiscal cliff deal?
Yeah, I did.
Is this budget going to assume the $600 billion in new revenue in that fiscal cliff deal?
Well, we haven't got to the final product. Paul has not yet released it. The Budget Committee has not yet shown it. Well, it potentially will. It potentially will. Well, I want to look at it in its totality. That's what, when you do a budget, and I'm not trying to punt on this, I'm trying to say you have to look at all of the things. I was a kicker in college, all right? I'm pretty good at kicking. But look, at the end of the day, you've actually got to put numbers on a piece of paper and achieve balance. And so I think there's a mix there.
But speaking to Americans' frustration, the Republicans voted overwhelmingly against a deal that raised $600 billion in revenue. And now it sounds like they're going to put out a budget that pockets that $600 billion and put that up for a vote. So I think that paradox is a little difficult to understand.
We've won some things and we've lost a lot of things, okay?
But you guys are conceding that fight, it sounds like. You guys are conceding the fight on those higher taxes and saying we lost that battle and we're giving in.
What we've always said is we want to broaden the base and lower the rate. I do believe that there is common ground.
With the fiscal cliff deal, increase the rates.
I do believe that there is common ground in getting rid of a lot of these loopholes. I really do. But we want to broaden the base and lower the rate. We fundamentally don't believe that we're just one good tax increase away from prosperity in this country. And we've already
conceded that fight, that Obama won that fight on the higher tax rates?
We've lost a number of fights. And look,
a little bit of punting there, too.
I mean, we have. But I want to get to the point, and I think the fundamental question for the Democrats, what I have for Chuck Schumer and the president and others is, should we at some point actually balance our budget? And if you're going to do so, how are you going to do that? Because at least we're putting something on paper and introducing it. Democrats haven't done that in the Senate for now close to 4 years.
And what is going to be that big ticket? If it's not going to be Obamacare, I mean, to me, the message in that is there's got to be some big ticket item, right, that is going to be in place that will balance the budget.
But also,
Obamacare is not going to be it because you don't have the votes for that.
But really,
we do in the House.
Who says that we have to balance the budget? Lots of economists say that we don't, that this is a complete and utter waste of time, that it's much better to get the economy moving so more people are employed, you bring in more revenues instead of trying to cut. And besides, even talking about households, how many households today have balanced budgets? Most of us carry debt. We've got to send our children to college. We as families have to make investments in our future. Why would you be spending all this time obsessing about trying to balance the budget? And by the way, you lost the election. You guys lost.
Hold on. And
we want Obamacare.
We
voted for it.
I actually won. That's why I'm sitting here.
Let the congressman answer.
You're making the case that scares the living daylights out of me, because to continue to spend in perpetuity without any regard for our future and our finances and putting us all on the backs of the kids, at some point, somebody's going to have to pay this $16 trillion. You just can't spend into infinity without eventually sometime balancing your books. That's what states do it. In my state of Utah, we balance our budget.
But the federal government has never balanced the budget.
And two of you can stay around afterwards and have a balanced budget discussion. We're out of time. I got to get to the next commercial. Congressman, always nice to have you with us. We appreciate it. Coming up next.